Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, and we had a surprise hotfix. I had genuinely no idea this one was coming, and it released today, and I did not notice it until very late in the day, so I will release this video the morning after. But we do have a pretty sizable hotfix of 6.2.2, mostly a balance pitch for single player and multiplayer, but it's going to have a notable effect on the multiplayer scene. But we do have a couple of notable bug fixes. So the big highlight that they point out is that the campaign AI for the Warriors of Chaos should be notably improved, which is very exciting for people that want to fight actually decent Chaos armies. So basically they noticed that there was a problem with how the campaign AI was working its way through the building construction systems for the Warriors of Chaos, and it should work much better now. We have some performance improvements. We have general gameplay. So they fixed a couple of interesting little issues here, mostly just little bug problems, nothing that's super crazy. Block and smash affecting Savage Orcs is very exciting for me personally, because that's how I actually really like running my Savage Orc armies. Block and smash is fantastic for them. They also fixed a couple little tooltip things, various bugs with some of the new units, an exploit that existed in the Gelt campaign. We also see that Ogre Artillery now gets buffs from the defeat trait that you can pick up from Zatan, which is really good for Grease's Goldtooth in particular, as he's the nearest buy for that. We also see Skulltaker's ability should work properly. This one's actually quite nice. So Dwarfs and Tomb Kings, who kind of rely on getting a good amount of magic items to utilize their features to the best of their ability, they have received improved drop rates as a base faction system. So they are more likely to get magic items that then they can choose to keep or to break down to improve, create more items out of the scrap. We also see that the Golden Crown of Athrazar has had a slight fix. Void Armor now correctly gives fear as well as terror. Burning Books had a couple of bugs that got fixed, so now they properly apply Khorne corruption to the provinces that you're in, whether or not you own them. And they also fixed an issue that I actually heard about, where if you got the full set and you went through the dilemma, you could start getting new ones. That is no longer the case. We also see that there's some fixes for some various buildings, some UI fixes, and yeah, great, awesome, cool. Also, the rice paddies are properly flooded, as they well should be. Balance changes. Okay, this is actually pretty interesting. There's a lot of significant changes, especially for the multiplayer scene in here. I don't know how dramatic per se these changes are going to be. Well, some of them are huge, but we'll get into that. So we have that the solar engine is currently giving you a 2.5% vigor per second. It's going to say 0 right now, but that's just a small bug. It actually is giving you 0.25%. The Thunder Tusk is also going to be going down to 1 cap per army in multiplayer, but it didn't make it into this patch, but will happen for the next one. Then, oh boy, Domination got a really interesting update, which is that basically they are improving the viability of elite infantry. So for anyone that doesn't know, so Domination is the more popular of the multiplayer formats, and it is a very fun mode that functions mostly on capture points, where your goal is to get capture points and then hold them against your enemies. And a lot of the meta in recent times has been more about swarms as opposed to anything much elite. So you're often either working with like large monsters and single entities to try and deal lots of damage and break enemies, or you're dealing with tons and tons of kind of garbage units to basically swarm onto capture points and hold them by just overwhelming numbers. But there has been kind of a notable issue where elite units were not very good value because they often wouldn't have any better capture points than medium or light tier units, and this resulted in them just not performing as well, especially because they tend to be slower, and because they were more expensive, why would you take one kind of elite unit when you could have like two much cheaper units that could just outweigh them in capture points, making them kind of useless? Well, now they have attempted a bit of a fix here. So what we see is that there is now another new tier when it comes to capture point value, which is elites. And they have a capture point value of 7 rather than 5 for most infantry. There are, of course, expendable infantry, which have even less of a capture point value. But this is pretty interesting because this could mean you have situations where if you have like 2 of these elite units, they will be as heavy in capture weight pretty much as 3 regular infantry units. And, you know, they continue to scale better the more stuff that you have running around. But not every army has elites, according to this system. But the ones that do are, you have the Dark Elves, you have the Hargoneth Executioners, and the Blackguard are considered elite, including the Regiment of Renown versions for all the units that we'll be talking about. For the High Elves, it's the Phoenix Guard and the Swordmasters of Hoeth. For the Wood Elves, it's just the Blade Singers, which is kind of interesting. I kind of expected it to include the Wildwood Rangers, but nope, just Blade Singers. Dwarfs get Giant Slayers, Hammerers, Peak Gate Guard, Grudge Settler Hammerers, Iron Breakers, and Norgrimlings Iron Breakers. They have quite a few different elites. For Lizardmen, it's Temple Guard, all variants. Vampire Coast, it's Depth Guard, all variants. Chaos Dwarfs, it's the Infernal Ironsworn. Grand Cathay is the Celestial Dragon Guard. And then for humans, it's all variants of Chosen. So just all Chosen in the entire faction, along with the Skull Reapers, interestingly enough. So just all the different Chosens. And then for Chaos, it's all of the Exalted Demonic Infantry. So these are all considered the new elite infantry class. You'll notice there's a number of factions that are actually not included, like Vampire Counts aren't considered to have any. Neither are the Tomb Kings or many other factions that tend to be better about spamming infantry that's like reliable. But I think this is more to reward armies that have higher tier infantry that isn't as popular. But it's going to be interesting to see how this affects the gameplay. Now, this change is titanic for all forms of gameplay, whether you're playing single player campaign or multiplayer or whatever. Foot character minimum knockback resistance. This is a gigantic change. So they have basically made it where the minimum amount of knockback, ignore chance that all characters in the game have, is now 40%. It used to be 20 to 30% on particularly light characters. So what does this mean? Basically, when an enemy is attacking one of your characters on foot, they have a percentage chance that they will get knocked around or hit with significant knockback. So for instance, if there's like a dragon or a Vargulf, you know, some kind of large monster or cavalry character even, they will basically just keep knocking that infantry character over, which can allow that infantry character to dodge a lot of damage because they get knocked down on the ground. So then there's all that time where you're just waiting for them to kind of like get back up, and it wastes a lot of time. And what it can do, especially when you're in like large brawling melees, is it can make those infantry characters very, very hard to kill because they're just constantly getting knocked over, and then you're taking damage from all the units around them while you're trying to focus that target. And this has been used, especially in recent multiplayer, for essentially exploitative gameplay, where I think Intensity had like a notably famous build recently where he was running like double White Kings on foot, and the White Kings were just proving insanely hard to kill because they were pretty durable as is and could hit decently hard, but they also were really easy to knock over. So it was incredibly difficult for anything larger than them, like anything bigger than infantry, to kill them because they were just really, really good at dodging damage. So what they've done is they've made it where the vast majority, or all characters, now have a flat 40%, and a good number of them are probably a bit above that, which means that they're going to be significantly worse at just kind of like getting knocked over and dodging. This means that characters are far more likely to remain upright and are far more likely to not only be dishing out damage more consistently, but also receiving damage more consistently. So it's going to be much easier to attack them on a regular basis and much less likely for them to just keep getting knocked over and basically being kind of made invulnerable because of that. So this is going to make foot characters a lot more squishy in general, especially your lighter characters like your wizards or some of your more scout shooty type characters or your lighter assassin types. This is going to make them more vulnerable. But for those of them that are more like glass cannons, this is also going to make them better in a significant number of circumstances, because it's going to be less likely for them to just keep getting knocked over constantly over and over and over again. They're going to be more likely to stand their ground and deal damage. We got balance changes for pretty much all factions. For the Beastmen, we see that a significant amount of things have been made cheaper. The Beast Lord on all mounts is about 100 gold cheaper. Kazrak is 150 gold cheaper on everything. Malagor the Dark Omen is a little bit more expensive in multiplayer, going up 100. The Bray Shamans are more expensive by about 50. We see the same thing for the Great Bray Shaman, so the magic users going up in price a little bit. Zongors, both for Beastmen and Tzeentch, got a slight melee attack bonus to make them a little better. The Cockatrice is cheaper and also has a much, much higher knock and hit ignore chance. So basically this means that when the Cockatrice would get hit by a good amount of damage, there was a 50-50 chance that it would get staggered or have a reaction, which would basically interrupt whatever it was doing. So if it was trying to like flee from combat or it was trying to fight something, there was a pretty good chance that it would just keep getting stun locked. Well, now it's gone up to a 75% ignore chance. So that means your Cockatrices are going to be much more likely to be able to flee from combat so they can cycle charge or just escape from a bad situation, or they're going to be much more successful at dealing damage in fights because they're going to be less likely to keep getting stunned. Incarnate Elemental of Beast got plus 10 leadership, which is a pretty significant buff. That is a massive amount of extra leadership, and as they are elementals, this is very, very good for them. It means they're going to be much less likely to crumble unless they're in a really, really bad situation. So they're going to be much more durable. Your Gore Herds got slight debuff. They lost 1 point of base damage, 1 point of armor piercing damage, which is a debuff. It's not massive, but it is a debuff. Ungor Raiders take 1 second longer to reload, so that's going to lower their damage output rather significantly over the course of like a battle. We see that all Chaos Spawn throughout this entire document got some pretty notable buffs. So Chaos Spawn, I'm pretty sure all Chaos Spawn in the game, though we'll double check it, but Chaos Spawn got plus 5 charge bonus, plus 2 base damage, and plus 8 armor piercing damage. So Chaos Spawn are going to be hitting quite a bit harder in almost all cases. Korok's Man Rippers are also 50 gold cheaper, whoop-de-doo. All right, Bretonnia. Bretonnia got a huge multiplayer change, absolutely massive multiplayer change, which is that all Bretonnian units and characters can now purchase the Blessing of the Lady for 100 gold. That is a titanic change. The Blessing of the Lady is really, really good. I want to say it's I can't remember if it's a ward save or physical resistance. I want to say it used to be physical resistance, but they might have changed it to be a ward save. But it's like a solid amount of damage mitigation. This is going to be far better on your elite units, but I caught a little bit of an Intensity stream earlier today, which is how I even noticed the patch had gone live, where he was kind of talking about it, and I do agree with his takes that when you're dealing with your more elite units, so pretty much any of your cavalry, the Blessing of the Lady is probably going to be a must-have. At least for like Knights of the Realm and above. So your Knights of the Realm questing knights, which Ground Knights should, I think, have at base. But this is going to be really, really good on pretty much all of your knights because it just removes so much damage. Now the Blessing of the Lady isn't perfect. You do lose it once the unit breaks from combat for the first time, but because you're taking significantly less damage from pretty much all sources, that means that your leadership is also going to be better for longer. because you ultimately are not taking as much damage, which means your leadership isn't taking significant penalties, and it's just really, really good. It's also going to be really nice for Bretonnian characters that didn't come with the Blessing base. So Paladins, this is going to be probably a must-have on Paladins, and if you're running the likes of, I think, Alberic or the regular Bretonnian Lord, it's also probably going to be a must-have. It's going to be a very, very solid buff. Which for 100 gold is going to be worth it on your more elite knight type things. We also see that the Hippogriff mount melee characters, with the exception of King Lewin, are 50 gold cheaper. The Prophetess in all forms is 50 gold cheaper. Battle Pilgrim's got a pretty sexy buff. Not only +2 melee defense, which is great, but they also got silver shields instead of bronze. So Battle Pilgrims are going to be much, much more reliable when it comes to fighting small arms fire. So they're going to be really, really good compared to what they were of charging into enemy fire, of getting shot at by handgunners and archers and crossbowmen and stuff, because they got basically another 20% damage mitigation, which is great for them. The Holy Wardens of La Massental Abbey got 5 bonus versus infantry, which makes sense. That standardizes them with the rest of the game, where Total War has come to the decision over the many years that if you're wielding dual weapons, it means that you should have anti-infantry. So they have now been given that +5 bonus versus infantry. That's going to make them incredible at trading with other enemy infantry, because they have like frenzy and magic attacks and a bunch of other crazy shit. So they're going to be very, very good at chewing through enemy infantry. Foot Squires are not only 25 gold cheaper, but got +5 leadership, +2 melee attack, and +2 melee defense, which is fantastic, especially for the Beast Slayers. This is going to make them far more sturdy, and they also just trade better, and they're cheaper. What's not to love? Field Trebuchets, both versions are 50 gold cheaper. The Knights of the Realm got a really nice buff of +10 armor, taking them up to 100. Plus, they got +2 base damage and +1 armor piercing damage, so just nice, flat, sexy buffs for Knights of the Realm. Grail Guardians got 50 gold cheaper. Questing Knights got +10 armor, bumping them up to 90. Very, very nice. Can't sneeze at that. So Bretonnia eating really good with this patch. Bretonnia got some huge buffs this patch. Chaos Dwarfs. We see that the Chaos Dwarf Sorcerer on Bale Taurus has been made a little bit more expensive. It makes sense. It was by far the most popular choice. The Infernal Castellan got +10 bonus versus large, making him significantly better in combat against large targets. Hashid Stark Ravagers got a 50 gold price reduction, which is fine. They used to be a super popular choice, and then I think they got overpriced, so they got brought down a little bit. Cathay Fireborn lost 75 gold, which is really nice. They're a reasonable pick, so making them 75 gold cheaper is really, really cool. The Cathay Destroyer got a 200 cost price reduction, in addition to +4 melee attack, +4 melee defense, and its Hellish Frenzy now lasts for longer. So the Cathay Destroyer is not only cheaper and also better at defending itself and better at making contact, but it's Hellish Frenzy, so it's unique version of like a really powerful frenzy buff. Instead of going away once it's taken over 25% of its health, you now have to get it below 50% of its health in order for it to lose it. I don't know if this is going to make the Cathay Destroyer good, but it's certainly a lot better than it was. It's definitely probably one of the least popular big monsters in the game. It does seem to struggle a lot compared to, say, like your Toad Dragons or your Dread Saurians or your Frostworms or any of those other creatures. So this is definitely along the right path. I don't know if it's going to be enough to ultimately do it, but we'll have to see. Magma Cannons are 50 gold cheaper. The Skullcracker, all variants, is 50 gold cheaper. Iron Demons, however, are 50 gold more expensive, all versions, which does make sense. Train builds have been quite popular now in multiplayer for a hot minute. So making the Skullshakers and Iron Demons now equal, I think is reasonable, because Iron Demons are really, really solid because of their kind of harass-focused shooting. And Skullcrackers were good for a while, and then they kind of fell out of popularity. So we'll have to see them bring this back. Demons of Chaos. Technically, they benefit from a lot more than is just listed here. It's just included in the Mono God stuff. But Be'lakor is 150 gold cheaper. Nice. Dark Elves. Scourge Runner Chariots, including mounts, have a 1 second longer base reload time. So over the course of a battle, that will debuff them rather significantly, because it means it takes them 1 second longer between each volley to shoot. We see that Malekith on the Cold One Chariot got plus 10 charge bonus, plus 2 acceleration, plus 1 deceleration, so just flat buffs. We see it also for the Master on Cold One Chariot. This just means they're more deadly on the charge, and they're also much better at following move commands, needing to make like sudden getting out of combat, making sudden changes in direction, slamming into enemies, etc., etc. This is just net buffs, maneuverability wise and strength wise, so the charge bonus. Harkonneth Executioners got plus 2 melee attack, plus 4 charge bonus, plus 1 base damage, and plus 3 armor piercing damage. So that's very nice buffs for the Harkonneth Executioners. Very good. Can't sneeze at that. Just means they're going to be significantly, not crazily, but they're going to be better at damage output, which is never a bad thing for them. We see regular Cold One Chariots got a plus 15 charge bonus. That is a lot. So plus 15 additional charge, and then they got the same acceleration and deceleration, so just standardizing the Cold One Chariots to just be better overall. Cold One Knights are 50 gold more expensive, as are the Dread Knights, so making them a little more difficult to take in mass. The War Hydras got some pretty interesting changes here. So the War Hydras are not only 50 gold cheaper, but got almost 1,000 extra health. So, which for a I mean, that's just good, but for a regenerating monster, it's extra good, especially the Hydras, because they have the, when, you know, lose one head, another takes its place rule, where they get like big bursts of healing as well. They're one of the best regenerating monsters in the game, next to like the Hell Pit Abomination. So this is just net good for them. Not only are they cheaper, but they have a lot more health. Awesome. I don't know if that's going to make them competitive, but it certainly doesn't hurt. And then the Charybdis got plus 5 melee attack. So the Charybdis is just better at dealing damage to enemies and stuff. Not the easiest monster to use, but hey, makes it more effective. Here we see a pretty significant debuff for the Dwarfs. Anyone that takes Rune Lords of any kind, including Thoric Ironbrow, will no longer get Rune of Hearth and Home in multiplayer. It has been removed from multiplayer. And they are, Thoric is also 100 gold more expensive. So pretty significant debuff to what most people have been doing with the Rune Lords. Rune of Hearth and Home was very good. The big thing is that it gave pretty much everybody immune to psychology. It made immune to psych super easy to get access to. So that is now gone, which means that dwarf armies are going to be significantly more vulnerable to fear and terror, which granted, dwarves are pretty good against that, but you know, that's there. Ungrim now has another upgrade option with Glorious Death for 150 gold, so you can make Ungrim more powerful in exchange for money. This one's actually quite nice. So we see that Garrogrim Iron Fist and the Doom Seekers, their unique ability where they get significant buffs by killing enough enemies, has been, the cap of it has been significantly reduced. So it used to be that they required 300 kills in order to max out their the charge up bar, which is a lot, to be fair. It has now been capped at 150. So not only do you need less kills overall to fully charge your meter in single player and multiplayer, but it means that every kill is now worth twice as much, because it's just the maximum is now 150 instead of 300. So every kill you get is twice as effective as it used to be, which is quite nice. Bolt Throwers got a slight price increase of plus 50. For the Empire, Volkmar the Grim, for some reason, has been buffed on his War Altar. So he got plus 5 melee defense and plus 10 bonus versus infantry. Volkmar I've always been kind of scared of on the War Altar. I don't know if maybe they over-nerfed him at some point in the past and I just didn't notice it or forgot. But yeah, Volkmar got a pretty damn good buff, especially when he's just mulching through infantry. The Arch Lectors got some really nice bonuses. They've been made standardized with the dual wielding, which we talked about, where now they have plus 10 bonus for his infantry to standardize them with people that wield two-hand weapons. And they also receive plus 5 base melee attack, so they're just significantly better aggressive combatants. I still don't think this is going to be good enough to make them really compare against like the Legendary Lords and other Lords for multiplayer, but this will make them much more attractive in single player. All versions of the Warrior Priest got plus 5 melee defense, making them just more survivable. Great. Engineers got some pretty big debuffs. So not only do they take 1 second longer to fire, which we talked about earlier, but their calibration distance has also been reduced. So calibration distance is basically that your character has a range, and within that range, their calibration distance is basically that there's a certain distance that so within their range, there's a certain point where you reach the end of their calibration distance. And past that point, they get significantly less accurate. So basically, the engineers have had their effective range reduced by 10, but 10 yards, but overall, their overall range should be the same, but they're going to be less accurate closer to them than they were before. So they're not going to be as good at long range. Known Ironsides are 50 gold cheaper. Flagellants got +4 charge bonus. The Mechanical Steed got +4 melee defense. Neat. We also see the Tattersouls are 75 gold cheaper. That is a pretty significant price reduction for a unit. They also are cheaper in upkeep for single player, and they got +4 charge bonus. Very nice. Zintler's Reichsguard are 50 gold cheaper. Mortars are 50 gold cheaper. Same for Sutzen's guns. Hellblaster volley guns got buffed. That's very cool. So the Hellblaster volley gun and the Black Lions now have a higher penetration of 3 instead of 2. This is just a really good buff. So penetration is basically the amount of models a shot can go through before it'll stop. So instead of your Hellblaster volley gun shooting at a unit and it can only go through the front 2 guys and then it would be done, now it will go through the front 3 guys. So this will make it significantly better against most targets, to be honest. I mean, it'll be much better against infantry, cavalry, monstrous infantry, which can usually be between 2 and 3 ranks depending on how people are controlling them, but it'll just make them much more effective at the targets you should be using them against. Grand Cathay, we see that the Astromancer on the Great Moonbird is 100 gold cheaper, +20 base damage, and +40 armor piercing damage. That is a huge amount of new damage. So he's going to be hitting significantly harder. The Gatemaster, their calibration area has been reduced from 5.1 to 1. Calibration area. I want to say this makes them more accurate, not less accurate, because I believe the Gatemaster is the only... Yeah, because the Gatemaster is a single-shot crossbow. I think he's the only single-shot crossbow character we have in the game right now, if memory serves. Because I think all of the other crossbow characters are multi-shot. I think that's right. But basically, this just makes it where his shot should be more accurate, if memory serves. But the Astromancer on the Whooshing Compass is going to be 50 gold cheaper. Setang the Watcher, which this buff is also for the Terracotta Sentinels. This is a very, very nice buff for the Terracotta Sentinels. Not only did they get +10 leadership, which, like we talked about with the Incarnate Elemental of Beasts, means that they are significantly more resistant to crumbling because they are constructs. So they do crumble when they get to low leadership. So this is going to make them much, much more survivable. But they also got the Encourage aura, which is going to make them just significantly better at supporting your other troops. Because basically they will be adding an additional leadership buff to the units around them. So they are now supporting your army even better than just being like terror causers. But they are now making your troops more likely to stand and fight and be reliable and such, which is a pretty nice change. Jade Warrior, 25 gold cheaper. Dragon Guard, 100 gold cheaper. 50 gold cheaper, sorry. Celestial Dragon Crossbows, 50 gold cheaper. Nengao Grenadiers got 10 more guys per unit. So instead of 80 guys per unit, it's 90 guys per unit, which is just a really nice buff. Means they're going to have more health. They're going to have more grenades to throw with each volley of ammo. Just a flat, really nice buff for the Nengao Grenadiers. We also see that the Construct Lions are both 100 gold cheaper. Very nice. Whooshing War Compass base version is 50 gold cheaper, and the Giant Moonbird is 100 gold cheaper and has got the same damage buffs as the character version. That's really, really nice. I don't know if that's going to make it a competitive choice, but it does mean it's going to be significantly better at dealing damage to enemies. Greenskins. Gorbad Ironclaw has his DeBoss ability is now cheaper in multiplayer, so it's 50 gold cheaper, which is nice. Wyverns have put on some weight. So the Wyverns have been to the gym and they are significantly heavier. So we're going up from 2,300 mass to 3,000 mass. So they're going to be much, much better at pushing through enemy models to either get at something they want to get to or more likely pulling out of combat. That 3,000 mass allowing them to push people out of the way, get out of combat, and get back up into the air. And it also should make their charges and such more devastating. We see that the Night Goblin Big Boss, all versions, is 75 gold cheaper, which is pretty great. That's going to make him very, very cheap. So that's the hero version for anyone. No, that's the... Yeah, that's the hero version. So that's going to make him better. We also have Snagla Grobspit is 50 gold cheaper. Ruglug's Armored Orcs got a slight reduction on their ammo, so they only have 22 volleys now instead of 24. And they got a 25 gold increase, so they've been nerfed a little bit. Night Goblins, looks like all Night Goblins. Yeah, all versions of Night Goblins have lost 1 point of base weapon damage, but they have gained 1 point of armor piercing damage, which is just a flat buff. So that just makes them better. Because armor piercing damage cannot be mitigated by armor, but base damage can, so this just makes them a little bit better against armored targets. We also see that Night Goblin Archers got +1 to their base missile damage, so that just means that they're going to deal more damage. Neat. Snotling Pump Wagons with Flappas are 50 gold more expensive, so they're going to be more expensive to take. But Snotling Pump Wagons with Spiky Rollers are 50 gold cheaper and got +5 charge bonus, +2 base damage, and +3 armor piercing damage. Very, very nice buff for the Spiky Rollers. Going to make them a little bit more competitive, try and make them a more viable option versus the Flappas, which the Flappas are very, very good. We see the Goblin Rock Labas are 50 gold cheaper. Snagla's Death Thrower, which is the Goblin Bolt Thrower Regiment of Renown, now has Vanguard deployment, which it definitely should. Trolls are 50 gold cheaper. Mangler Squigs seems to have been a little over nerfed from when they got nerfed a little while back. So they got +2 base damage, +6 armor piercing damage, and +4 bonuses versus infantry. So just some flat damage buffs and making them a little bit more specialized against infantry. We see that the Feral Wyverns are 100 gold cheaper and also have jumped up to that 3,000 mass. The Feral Hydra got the same buffs as the Dark Elf version. And Arachnaroks, interesting. Those are huge buffs. Wow, I didn't realize the Arachnarok knockback was so bad. Okay, so the Arachnarok's knockback ignore chance and hit reaction ignore chance have been vastly improved. 15% is abysmal. That is terrible. So basically that meant whenever an Arachnarok got hit by an attack that did like any decent amount of damage, there was an 85% chance they would like react to it. So they would stagger and like ignore or would stop attacking or would stop moving because they'd be reacting to taking damage from like shooting or melee or whatever. So their hit reaction chances jumped up to 60%, which is 4 times as good. And then their knockback ignore chance. So if they were getting hit by something that had enough knockback to basically push through their mass and everything, once again, 85% chance that it would cause them to just stagger, which means that the Arachnaroks would be super shitty in monster fights because other monsters are going to be likely to be hitting them with like significant knockback. Which means that they would just be chain staggered, like ridiculously. So this is going to make Arachnarok so much better, like so much better at melee fighting. Because now their knockback ignore chance is up to 85%, so they're going to be significantly more sturdy in monster duels. And then their hit reaction ignore chance jumping up to 60% means that they will be much more likely to continue fighting and not just get staggered and stun locked. High Elves, we see that Tyrion got some pretty nice buffs. So his hit reaction ignore chance is jumped up to 80%, both on foot and on Malhinder. And he also got pretty nice damage buff. So switched out 20 base damage for 20 armor piercing damage. Means he's just better against everything. Unless like they just didn't have armor. So awesome. Nice buffs for Tyrion. Alithanar, the Moonbone, now has a homing profile. That is going to make Alithanar much scarier. So Alithanar traditionally shot like a regular bolt thrower where he would just shoot in a perfect straight line, which meant that it was very easy, generally speaking, to avoid being shot by him, especially in multiplayer, because you could just move out of the way. This is going to make it much harder to dodge Alithanar shooting attacks because it's going to home in on you. The Shadow Crown, that's also a really nice buff. I can't remember exactly what the Shadow Crown does off the top of my head, but basically it was a profile that required an enemy to be within a certain range of you. That is no longer the case, which is good for him. That's very good for him. Let's see if I actually look up what it does. Oh wow, yeah, okay, that's gonna be really strong. So it gives 15% speed and +5 melee defense to all allies within 55 meters. But it used to require an enemy within 70 meters to have any effect. That enemy part is now completely gone, which is really, 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 really good. So basically, a Lithanar is now going to be able to just give a flat speed and melee defense bonus to all allies within 55 meters, no matter what, which means that him and his troops are going to be able to maneuver much, much better. The melee defense bonus obviously is not that helpful unless there's enemy, attacking you. But the 15% speed bonus is going to be really good for him and allies. And he's also 100 gold cheaper. So he's less than 1,000 gold to take now. That's quite good. Loremaster of Hoeth, we see... so for the Moonbow, I believe that's just for the Moonbow ability. But that's still nice. I'm pretty sure that's just for the ability of the Moonbow, not his regular base attacks. Curious how good the homing on that's going to be. I'll have to mess around with that. Loremaster of Hoeth, pretty fat buffs, +10 base damage, +30 armor piercing damage. So going to be doing a ton more damage. The Noble now has Colossal Strike instead of Deadly Onslaught in multiplayer. Good, that makes them more standardized. Sisters of Avalorn are 50 gold cheaper, which is interesting. They were very, very good, but now they're easier to take. White Lions of Krace got 5 extra hit points per entity, which is going to be great for them because obviously that's going to stack with how many guys are in the unit. So they got a pretty significant health buff. We see the Swordmasters of Hoeth got +8 charge bonus, +3 armor piercing damage, +1 base damage. So Swordmasters are just far more efficient at dealing damage and are also going to be much, much nastier when they get the charge off. And then we see that all Silverhelms and Dragon Princes got +1 acceleration, which is really, really good. Acceleration is a very, very important stat for chariots and cavalry because it determines your ability for cycle charging, really. Your ability to go from being in a combat or being at rest to moving very suddenly to get to where you need to go. So in the case of most cavalry, your ability to cycle charge. So that's very, very good for the Elven cavalry units. Khorne, Relentless Rage got a pretty nice buff. So Relentless Rage is the medium army ability, the second tier army ability for Khorne, which makes it where a unit is unbreakable and unkillable. So basically you would use it on a unit that was involved in combat and it would make it where the unit couldn't break, obviously, but also units in the entity cannot die. They could take damage, but they basically stop at like 1 health. So you could take a unit that's about to get absolutely shredded and buy them some time to deal as much damage back as possible. But this now gives them the Unyielding Assault attribute, which is going to be a significant buff for those units, because Unyielding Assault means that their melee attack cannot be reduced by any means. So you can now pick a unit that is at like really, really, they're like at exhausted vigor. Maybe they're fighting a unit that has like debuff abilities, and they could be affected by like spells that lower melee attack. But if you drop Relentless Rage on them, it now will kick their melee attack back up to what it should be, which is going to be very, very good. This is going to be awesome for taking units that are kind of about to, like, if your enemy's trying to kind of like wombo combo one of your units, this is a really good way to punish them for it by activating Relentless Rage, so your guys are at their peak fighting fit. Like their damage, I believe, will still be, their damage will still be reduced by things like spells and exhaustion, but their melee attack won't. So they're going to be connecting all of those attacks, which for Khorne is really nasty. Valkyrie of the Bloodies, 100 gold more expensive. Skull Taker is 50 gold more expensive in single player and multiplayer, interestingly. On both on foot and on his Blood Throne. He also lost 10 melee attack, or melee defense, excuse me, on the Blood Throne. So Skull Taker is going to be much more vulnerable to taking melee damage. That is a significant melee defense reduction for Skulltaker on the Blood Throne. The Blood Throne is a very popular pick for him because not only does it give him a lot of maneuverability and mass, and he can like throw people around the fights, but it also makes him regenerate in close combat. But now he's going to be taking significantly more damage in those melee brawls. Arbol the Undefeated got some really nice buffs, actually. Not only is he 50 gold cheaper, but on his Fleshhound, he has higher mass. And also the requirements for his Thirst for Challenge and Destroyer of Khorne abilities have been reduced pretty handily. So Destroyer of Khorne now requires him to only have 100 kills to max it out, whereas Thirst for Challenge has gone from 400 to 250. So that means for Destroyer of Khorne, every single kill you get with Arbol gives you 1% of the Destroyer of Khorne buffs, which is very nice. And then Thirst for Challenge, I mean, that's almost cut in half. So once again, that's making every kill that you get 150 times more effective, or percent more effective, which is great. These are very, very nice. So Arbol needs significantly less kills to become much, much more powerful on the battlefield with his items and abilities. The Blood Speaker, all variants, is 50 gold cheaper. Silent Amphingrim is 75 gold cheaper. Gorebeast Chariots of Khorne getting a buff. They're 50 gold cheaper, plus 2 melee defense, and plus 0.5 acceleration, which isn't massive, but it's also not nothing. When you're dealing with such small increments, plus 5 is still quite good. But yeah, they're going to be more sustainable in sustained combat and also better at pulling themselves out of combat. Blood Crushers of Khorne got 8 more HP per model. They don't have a ton of guys per unit, so this isn't going to be like a massive amount of extra HP, but it is going to be a noticeable amount. I want to say they have like 20 or something guys per unit. So it's not nothing. It's a couple hundred more HP. Skull Crushers of Khorne got 8 as well. 8 more health per guy, so same thing. Spawn of Khorne, we already talked about the spawn. They got the same stuff. So just spawn are just better at dealing damage now. The Slaughter Brute got plus 1 acceleration and plus 1 deceleration, so it's going to be much better at maneuvering and getting around. Going from 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 is a pretty significant increase. I don't know if that's going to make the Slaughter Brute good. I doubt it, but that will make it better at being controlled and like moved around the battlefield. Kislev, we see here for good old Kislev, that, apologies for my phone there, that we are dealing with, let's see, Boris is 50 gold cheaper, all versions. The Watchmen and the Knight now have, wow, that is way more charge bonus. They're going from 12 to 26 to standardize them with two-hand weapon, or dual weapon loadout, which is great. So they're going to be much, much nastier on the charge. Armored Cossars with great weapons are 50 gold cheaper and got plus 2 charge bonus. All versions of Ice Guard got an additional 20% spell damage resistance, knocking them up to 35. That's pretty good. So that means they will shave roughly a third off of all damage that, or 33% damage mitigation from all abilities and spells. That's quite nice. Warbear Riders got plus 6 charge bonus. That's pretty good. That's going to help them a lot, especially when they're trying to get like those devastating flank and rear charges. Elemental Bear got plus 10 leadership, as did the Incarnate Elemental of Beasts. Solid. So we're saying that all of the big constructs look to be getting more leadership to make them more stable. So they're less likely to start breaking down and dying earlier in the battle. And then the Frostworm, all variants and mount versions got minus 10 armor, so going down to 90. I think that's a pretty good change. The Frostworms are pretty oppressive when you're dealing with them. They can be hard to stick damage on. So I think minus 10 armor is appropriate there. The Lizardmen, we see the Red-Crested Skink Chief is 50 gold cheaper in all versions and also can now take Colossal Strike, which is going to make it much, much better against enemy large targets. The Saurus Old Blood, all versions, 50 gold cheaper. Crocscore Ancient, 50 gold cheaper. Lord Croak, 50 gold cheaper. All versions of the Skink Chief, 50 gold cheaper. That's actually really nice for the Skink Chief. Ooh, nice. All Saurus Warrior, okay, not the Spearosaurus, but all the Sworded Board Saurus got plus 3 melee attack. That is very nice. That's an over 10% increase, so that's really, really good for them. Sacred Croxagors, both versions got +2 melee attack, +2 charge bonus. Awesome, great, I'll happily take it. The Feral Carnosaur and Stegodon got -50 cost. The Pale Death got -50 cost. And then the Giant Blowpipes have been recategorized. So they used to count as artillery, which is very silly because they are not artillery. So they no longer count as artillery. Instead, they count as a miscellaneous projectile, so they no longer deal like the additional leadership impact. Because there is a leadership debuff for being hit by artillery specifically. So that's been removed. However, they still cannot be blocked, which is really, really good. So this means that if someone has missile block chance, so like shields, it won't work against giant blowpipes. Neutral units. Ulrika, for all armies that she's a part of, is 50 gold cheaper. Gotrek's Doom is now 50 gold cheaper. Cool. Norsca, Wulfric the Wanderer on Norscan Warhorse, as well as the Marauder Chieftain, has 300 more mass. Okay, so they're notably heavier and able to get in and out of combats easier. Wulfric the Wanderer on Mammoth is 50 gold cheaper. Famir Balefiend got +5 attacks. Cool. Kihar the Tormentor has flaming attacks. All right, fair enough. Marauder Spearman got -25 cost, as well as the Icehorn Marauders. Very cool. Marauder Berserkers slimmed down entity collision, going from 0.89 to 0.75. Oh, that's quite interesting. Okay, so they have a narrower, they're going to have a much narrower entity collision now. So this should make them perform much better in combats than they were. Because if they're too wide, it means that they're going to be, it's easier for enemy units, I think, to gang up on individual models and have chances to deal damage. Marauder Champions, 100 gold cheaper. Ice Wolf Chariots, 50 gold cheaper. Marauder Horsemen with throwing axes are 25 gold cheaper. Norse Controls, 50 gold cheaper. Famir Warriors got +5 charge bonus, very nice, and are also 50 gold cheaper, even nicer. The ROR version is 50. They're both 50 gold cheaper. That's great. Famir Warriors are great weapons, got +7 charge bonus. Okay, so they're jumping up to 35. The Feral Mammoth is 50 gold cheaper, and the other two Mammoth variants are 100 gold cheaper. Very nice. Rot Glorious Rot. Ooh, very nice buff on Rot Glorious Rot. So that's the max tier, or the tier 3 ability for Nurgle. It's the one where you target an enemy unit and it deals damage over time and then can spread to up to 5 nearby targets. We see the spread radius has been increased to 50 meters from 30, so it's much, much easier for it to spread amongst the enemy. And it also lasts for 2 more seconds, which means it's going to deal significantly more damage. I mean, yeah, that's just more damage. Great. Rot Flies have got quite a bit of mass. So we see the mounted version got +400 mass, going up to 1800, and then the non-mounted versions, non-character versions, I should say, have all gone from 1000 to 1500, which is that's a good change. I've noticed that Rot Flies, especially plague drones, felt way lighter than they should have. They had a really, really hard time pushing out of like infantry units. So this is going to make them significantly better at that, and also better like knocking people over when they charge in and stuff. So that's a really nice change for all of the plague drones and Rot Flies. Pox Riders of Nurgle are 50 gold cheaper and got +4 melee attack. Very cool. That's nice. Barons of the Bog got +4 melee attack. Spawn we already talked about. Beast of Nurgle got +5 base damage, +15 armor piercing damage, and +0.5 run speed. So the Beast of Nurgle is going to be actually significantly faster than it was. It's not massive, but it's going to be noticeably faster when it's running at full speed. The Great Unclean one is 100 gold cheaper, and its uses for Stream of Corruption has been increased by 1. That's actually really, really nice. That's great. So you get an additional use of the Stream of Corruption bounce spell. Toad Dragons hit ignore chance reaction has gone from 60% to 70%. That's fantastic. That's going to make the Toad Dragon much less likely to get staggered by pretty much everything. So whenever it gets hit, it now only has a 30% chance of like reacting and ceasing its movement or attacks, and now instead of a 40%. Ogre Kingdoms. Overall gain rate for army ability resource decreased by 10%. Okay, so that's a bit of a nerf. Basically, that means that, so the ogres, they build up their meter whenever they are charging. So it just means that whenever you're charging enemies, your meter is 10% slower to... each individual resource point is 10% less effective than it used to be at filling up the meter. We also see Meat Feast has been debuffed as well. I believe Meat Feast was their second tier ability, which is a pretty sexy heal. It might have used to be the second ability. It might be the third ability now, but it's whatever the army ability is that heals. Now it's 1.4% per second instead of 1.6. So it's a bit of a debuff. Not massive, but it is a notable debuff. Grease's Gold Tooth now has monstrous impact on his melee attacks. Whoa, that's kind of cool. All right, so that's fun. That's very unique. So, man, Greases, they're really trying to buff Greases. Honestly, I think the biggest thing Greases needs, besides being bigger, in my opinion, like if they could make Greases' model like 20% bigger, 10 to 20% bigger, I would kill for that. But more importantly, Greases probably needs like another 1,000 or so extra health, if not more than that. Like Greases should be pretty close, in my opinion, to like 10k health. But like Greases should have, he needs a lot more health. He also probably needs more missile resistance to make him much harder to bully with just mass shooting, because the problem is, because he's so slow, he's very, very vulnerable to lots of combined fire, which is not great. So like if they could give him like a sizable health buff and missile resistance, I think that would go a long way. But we also see that his Horde Master rules now baked into his multiplayer profile. I'm assuming that means it has not increased his price. It's just something he has now. Horde Master, if I remember correctly, I believe that's his buff that improves the leadership of nearby ogres. As a passive, I want to say that's what it is. Here, I can kind of look up his Total War profile real quick. So for his... Horde Master, so that's a passive ability. Yes, it gives plus 8 actually. Okay, plus 8 leadership to all units within 55 meters. That's great. Okay, that's actually pretty solid. That means Greases is just gonna have a really strong leadership aura, so units that are within 55 meters of him are much more likely to just stick around and keep fighting. I don't think it's gonna make him good enough to really compete with the other choices necessarily, but it, you know, every bit helps. Brag the Gutsman is 50 gold cheaper, has switched 55 damage of base damage to armor piercing, so that's just a really nice flat buff. His knock ignore chance has also gone up to 80%, so he's going to be much better at dueling other large targets, because other big things that are like wailing on him only have a 20% chance to stagger him with their knockback damage instead of 40%. So he's going to be significantly better at dueling other large targets, and he just deals significantly more damage against armored targets. So those just nice flat buffs for Bragg. For the Bruiser, we see he's 50 gold cheaper, 10% extra missile block chance, so he's now at 20% instead of 10. He also got plus 10 base damage, plus 15 armor piercing damage, and plus 10 bonus versus infantry. So really solid buffs for the Bruiser. Just making him much more lethal and resistant against missile fire. Awesome. Also cheaper. Hunter on Stonehorns, 50 gold more expensive. Piggyback Knights are 50 gold more expensive, but did get plus 1 melee defense. Lead Belchers had their projectile penetration reduced from 5 to 3. That's a pretty significant reduction, but 3 is still a lot. That's going to make the Lead Belchers slightly worse against cavalry and infantry blocks, but I don't think that's going to hurt them that bad, because they deal really good damage and they kill most of the models they hit. So like it's going to make them not as good against everything, but in most cases it's not really going to matter. The only time this will really matter is if they're firing at like particularly large groups of like infantry, because the projectiles won't be able to penetrate as many ranks. But I don't think that's going to be a huge nerf for them. I think it's going to be pretty minor, to be honest. Crushers are 50 gold cheaper, both versions. Oh no, all the Iron Fist versions are cheaper. That's what it is. So the Crushers with Iron Fist and Mournfang Cavalry with Iron Fist are 50 gold cheaper. Oh, interesting. Okay. Stonehorns got -5 leadership, all versions. Okay. Not the character version, but the base versions. So Stonehorns are much more likely to break and flee from combat. We also see the Thunder Tusk got plus 500 health, but it's slower. So its run speed was reduced by 0.6. And it also got -5 leadership. So Thunder Tusk and Stonehorns are going to be more vulnerable to leadership problems. But Thunder Tusk is also not moving nearly as fast when it's at full speed, but it also did get 500 health to compensate. Skaven, Quick Head Taker, got about 400 extra health. His knock ignore chance jumped up to 75%, which is going to be very nice for Queek because it's going to mean he's going to be much more effective at dealing damage and have way less time getting knocked around, like knocked to the ground and stuff. But it also means he's more likely to take hits. But I think with Queek, your goal is for him to hit as often as possible. Queek, I wouldn't call him a glass cannon, but he is a cannon. Like your goal with Queek is to activate Head Taker or Dwarf Gouger and just to let him go ham. So this makes it much more likely that Queek is going to stay on his feet and be attacking, which will be good for him, I think. And hey, he's cheaper. Warlords, all versions, 25 gold cheaper. Eshin Sorcerer is 50 gold cheaper. 300 base cost for the Eshin Sorcerer, my lord. Plague Priest is 50 gold cheaper, all versions. Gorich is 150 gold cheaper. Brood Horrors, the base version, is 50 gold cheaper and now has the Scurry Away passive, which makes sense. I think that's quite reasonable. So when it breaks from combat, it gets a notable speed buff. Warp Grinders got 20 extra health per guy. That's pretty significant. I want to say there's like between 16 and 20 or something like that guys per unit. I mean, 20 health per guy, that's pretty big. So that's like a good amount of extra health. Poison Wind Globadiers take 1 second longer to reload, so that's going to be a debuff to their range potential damage. Warpfire Throwers are 1 second faster to reload. Okay, so Warpfire Throwers are going to have improved damage. Avalanche Mortars are 100 gold more expensive. Slaanesh, same thing as Ogres. Their ability to charge their charge of their army ability is going to be 10% slower than it used to. Cultists of Slaanesh, all versions, is 50 gold cheaper. Soul Grinder of Slaanesh got plus 10 bonus versus large, so that's going to make it much, much better at dueling enemy large entities. Spawn, same thing as we talked about. Keepers of Secrets are 50 gold cheaper and have an extra use of Bound Lash of Slaanesh. Cool. They debuffed Pavane. That's funny. Tomb Kings, Chariot of the Gods got buffed again. So the Chariot of the Gods is even faster and better at cycle charging, going to an acceleration of 8 and a deceleration of 9. That is so fast. So holy god, that's so fast. So Cetra's ability to maneuver has gotten notably better. The War Sphinx is 100 gold more expensive and minus 30 turn speed. Oof. Okay, so that's going to make the Kimrian War Sphinx much, much worse at turning. So its ability to like pivot on the spot and turn and adjust is going to be way slower. Wow, that's a huge reduction on turn speed. Archon the Black on... Oh, okay, so all skeleton chariot mounts... Yes, all the basic skeleton chariot mounts got plus 30 base damage and plus 20 armor piercing damage. Pretty significant bonus damage. That is very, very nice. So a lot of bonus damage. The calibration distance on the Casket of Souls has been increased to 340. So the Casket of Souls is going to be significantly more accurate up to the 340 range instead of the 300. I can't remember if calibration distance is like your effective range or if it's your like entire range. I forget, but it's one of the two. But it does mean it's going to be better at longer range. We also see Hex Rates got buffed. Oh, they have flaming attacks again. Cool. Yeah, Hex Rates are supposed to have fire attacks. This is something I actually complained about a little bit recently. So I'm glad to see it's been fixed. That the whole point to Hex Rates, the whole point is that they're flaming skeletons. Like they're on fire. That's the entire point. But this is going to be really interesting because this is going to make them, I think, the only unit I know of in the game that has frostbite and flaming attacks, which is a very cool bonus. But they also got +2 melee attack, +2 melee defense, and plus, oh my gosh, 15 charge bonus, 61 charge bonus. Oh my god. Crypt Ghouls for Archon got +6 health per model. Fell Bats, 25 gold cheaper. Skeleton Archer Chariots. Wow, pretty nice missile damage buff. So +4 base damage, +1 armor piercing. All of the other Sphinxes got the same turn speed reduction. So all the Sphinxes are going to be not nearly as good as they were at maneuvering. The Cameron War Sphinx base version is 50 gold more expensive. Casca Skulls we already talked about. Screaming Skull Catapult is 50 gold more expensive. Okay. Village the Curseling, 100 gold cheaper. Twisted Twin intensity requirement has been reduced by 40. Okay, so it seems like they're trying to standardize the intensity requirements to be in the like 200 to 100 range instead of being like the ridiculous, genuinely stupid like 500s. That's very nice. I'm glad they're standardizing them. So that it's going to be, not significantly easier, but a bit easier to fill up your Twisted Twin. 200 is still quite a bit. Iridescent Horror Hero is 50 gold cheaper on all versions. I don't know why they note the mount note there, but okay. Zongor's got +2 melee attack. Exalted Pink Horror's got +5 armor and +1 armor piercing damage. Okay, nice, including the ROR version. So Exalted Pink Horrors are going to be more survivable and deal more damage at range. Doom Knights they got bonus versus large. They should have had that ages ago. Because they didn't have a speciality. They were super weird as far as like elite knights go. Especially because I think the Skull Crush or the Blood Crushers. They'd be the other mortal knights. So I'm pretty sure the Skull Crushers, the Rot Knights, both also are anti-large specialists. So yeah, the Doom Knight should also be anti-large to standardize them with the other like elite super knights. So they got 8 bonus versus large, and their entity mass is also got up to 1,300 from 1,000. So they're just way better at everything they do. Spawn and Tzeentch got the same buffs as everybody else. Cockatrice is 50 gold cheaper. Aeson the Fallen is 100 gold cheaper. Lord of Change, we see standardized with the other greater demons, where he's 50 gold cheaper, but also got an additional use of his basic spell. So he's got 2 use of Bound Pink Fire instead of just 1. And then Golden Griffin of Theurgy is also 50 gold cheaper. Vampire Coast. Arnis Assault Spite jumping up to that 75% knock reaction ignore chance, which is going to be a nice buff for her. It's going to make it where she's much more likely to deal damage to her enemies, which is really good for her because she's kind of like a hunter spec character where your goal is to try and net somebody and then get her on her and hope that she's able to spam a bunch of damage against them. So that's a nice buff for her. I doubt it's going to make her competitive, but it's nice. Count Noctilus, we see that his calibration distance is longer, so he's going to be more effective at a longer range than he used to be. Also, calibration area has been reduced, so that's really nice. So that means that the calibration distance, once again, is that at 275. Yeah, I'm pretty sure calibration distance is not your overall distance. So I want to say the overall distance is like, I don't remember how far it is, but it's further than that. So that means that if you're at the 275 mark instead of 225, you have 50 extra yards of like you're accurate instead of like really inaccurate. And calibration area is also really nice because that means that he's shooting at when he shoots at something, instead of dealing with like a 10-yard diameter sphere of like area he's going to hit, it's now an 8.5 bubble. So he's just going to be more accurate, which is good. Vampire Fleet Admiral with pistol can no longer bring the Black Parry up, but it can bring Forbidden Rod. I don't know if that's a buff or debuff, but okay, switching out items. Gunnery White, there we go. Gunnery White is 50 gold more expensive. Morngul Haunter is 150 gold less expensive. Oh, sorry, I said more, I meant less. I know it's 150. Wow, okay, that's pretty significant price reduction, actually. So 150 gold off on the Gunnery White on Rotting Promethean. And then the Morngul Hunter is also 150 gold less expensive. And the mass of the Morngul Hunter has gone up to 2,500. That's very, 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 very good. That's solid, actually. Minus 25 gold on the Zombie Pirate Deckhand mob with polearms. So they're cheaper to take. However, the Gunnery mob is 25 more expensive. Okay. Depth Guard got an extra 10 health points per model. That's pretty good on them. I mean, it's not massive. They don't have a ton of entities per unit, but that is always just good. You have more health, but of course they have the hunger, so they regenerate, and this means that their overall, their like maximum amount they're allowed to regenerate is going to be higher because they have a higher max health. Scurvy dogs are 25 gold cheaper. Fellbats 25 gold cheaper. Bloated corpses 50 gold cheaper. Wow. Okay, 350. That is very cheap. Deck droppers with handgunners are 50 gold cheaper. Necrofex Colossus, same thing as we talked about with Noctilus. Vampire counts. Helm and Ghost is now 50 gold cheaper, going down to a 500 base cost. Wow, that's cheap. Gorse will always get buffs as long as I work at this company. That's very funny. On his corpse guard, he's also 50 gold cheaper. The basic White King, that's a little bit of debuff. So he lost 200 health. Also, his knock, interrupt, ignore chance, and hit reaction ignore chance has gone up wildly. So he has a 75% chance to ignore everything, which is pretty wild. So, yeah. Okay, so basically, they're directly addressing the White King was overperforming. So he's going to be much, much easier to deal damage to on foot if you're trying to attack him with like a large entity. White King on Barded Steed also lost 200 health. Banshees gained 400 health, quite nice, and also gained 30 armor-piercing damage. That's really, really good. I'm still... CA, give Banshees a scream attack. Where is her scream? The Terrorgeist can scream. Where's my goddamn scream ability? The Banshee needs her scream. I don't know how we've gotten this far and she hasn't gotten a scream ability yet. Graveguard with Halberds, +2 melee attack, +2 melee defense. Cairn Wraiths, +2 melee attack, +2 melee defense, +10 charge bonus. Okay, nice. Ethereal units eating pretty good. Crypt Ghouls, 6 extra health per model. That's really, really solid for Crypt Ghouls. Hex Wraiths, +2 melee attack, +2 melee defense, +15 charge bonus, and Flaming Tax. Awesome. That's really good. Chill Guys, +2 melee, +2 melee defense, +15 charge bonus. They did not get Flaming Attacks, but that makes sense because they're the Chill Guys. Because they have the Frost Aura instead. So like for them, that makes sense as a gimmick. I'm really, really, really happy to see the Hex Wraiths got their Flaming Attacks back. Blood Knights are 50 gold cheaper, both versions. Very cool. Die Rolls 25 gold cheaper, all versions. Very nice. Fellbats 25 gold cheaper. Warriors of Chaos. Manticore Lord is 100 gold cheaper. The Chaos Dragon Lord got 600 extra health. Very nice. And also Flaming Attacks. Okay, cool. Lord of Khorne on Gorby's Chariot is 50 gold cheaper and has faster acceleration. Oh my gosh, so many price reductions. The Chaos Lord of Tzeentch on everything except the disc. Okay, interesting. So on foot, no, oh wow, okay, no, this is all over the place. No, it's not. I'm just stupid. Okay, so the Chaos Lord of Tzeentch on all versions is 50 gold more expensive. Okay, yeah. So the Chaos Lord of Tzeentch is more expensive by 50 on every version. Chaos Sorcerer Lord is 100 gold cheaper on the Manticore. He also gained 600 health on the Chaos Dragon and also deals flaming attacks now. The Exalted Hero on Manticore is 100 gold cheaper, 50 gold cheaper on the Gorby's Chariot with for the Exalted Hero of Khorne. He also has the acceleration bonus. Exalted Hero of Tzeentch is 75 gold more expensive on all versions. That is a significant price bump. So Exalted Hero of Tzeentch is more expensive. Marauders of Tzeentch with Spear, 25 gold more expensive. Chaos Warriors of Nurgle with Great Weapons got +4 charge bonus. Chaos Warriors of Tzeentch are 25 gold cheaper. Both versions. Okay, so Chaos Warriors got a nice little buff. Chaos Warriors with Great Weapons also got +4 charge bonus. We see Chaos Knights with Chaos Knights with Lances. All versions are 100 gold cheaper. That is pretty significant. That's a hefty price decrease for Chaos Knights with Lances. Very nice. Swords of Chaos no longer deal splash damage. Interesting. That is super interesting. Okay, so the Swords of Chaos are going to be much, much less good against like really, really big, sprawling hordes of enemies, but they're going to be much more effective at killing models. So basically, they're very, very good at killing individual models or taking out characters and stuff like that, particularly those that are surrounded by allies. This is going to make them mostly a lot better. And it's, I mean, they're just gonna be really killy. They're gonna be very killy. Gorby's Chariots, same stuff we talked about earlier. Chaos Trolls, basic ones are 50 gold cheaper. Chaos Spawn, same thing we talked about earlier. Weird Spawn, same thing. Wood Elves, Orion can now take Colossal Strike. Awesome, fantastic. His hit reaction ignore chance has gone up to 80%, so he's going to be much better at dueling. Glade Captain can now take Colossal Strike, very cool. Glade Captain on the Great Eagle now has bonus versus large of 35. Very, very nice. Can make him a very effective duelist against other large targets, so that's fantastic for him. And it kind of standardizes his role, or her role, I should say, in the army, so that's good. Winter Heart Guard are 50 gold less expensive. Hawk Riders got +2 melee attack, +4 melee defense, and +9 charge bonus. Very, very nice buff for the Hawk Riders melee potential. Zotes are 100 gold cheaper and have an additional use of Flesh to Stone, going up to 3 uses per battle. That's quite nice. Cave Bats are 25 gold cheaper. Ability balance. Summon duration changes. Okay, very cool. The Summon Vargol for the Von Karstein Lord can now last 13 more seconds, so it's a 90-second summon. That's very good. Summoned Great Eagle from the Elves with the Lore of Beasts, I think the High Elf and Wood Elf, I think, now lasts for 110 seconds instead of 78. That's a significant increase, almost double. So that's almost to 2 minutes. Summoned Plague Monks from Petulant Birth is now up to 90 seconds, so that's a 17-second increase for the Plague Priests. The Summoned Cygor getting a 33-second additional summon to chuck rocks. I will say, some of these are all great. I'm very happy about these. I do wish very much that they would give us a buffed version of this spell. I forget, I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. The Beastmen summon spell. It should have an overcast version. So should the Lord Beast version. They should have overcast versions where they give you bigger monsters. So like, you summon a Manticore with the basic version. If you overcast it, it should give you like a dragon or a Hydra. I think like a basic dragon would be cool. Because that's what it did in tabletop. You could overcast it to get a bigger monster. And I think that would be totally reasonable for Total War. Also, the Beastman one, if you overcast it, it should give you a Gorgon. If you cast the base version, it gives you a Cygor. If you overcast it, it gives you a Gorgon. I think that's super duper 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 reasonable. Because summoning the Cygor is cute, but the Cygor is also not good in melee scenarios. You know, you're summoning him to, at best, you summon him at a distance to just be chucking boulders for now almost 3 minutes. Hope that he like lands his shots and your opponent isn't paying super close attention, or to like cause terror, right? But the Gorgon would be so much more effective for like if it lasted for like 110 seconds or 100, or like I could see it lasting a little less long because it's a melee specialist. But then you'd be summoning it to like go into combat and kill shit instead of fighting at a distance, and it would just be so cool. I would be so happy to use the overcast version of that spell. Summon Manticore lasts for 35 more seconds. Summoned for 110. Summon Crypt Ghouls last for 10 more seconds, so they're up to 95. Summon Crypt Horrors last for 13 more seconds, so they're up to 90. Summon Graveguard, which is only for Helm and Gorst. I will never understand why Gorst summons Graveguard. I will never understand that as long as I live. He is like the weirdest character to have that on because he has no relationship with Graveguard at all. Like, he's the zombie guy, and he doesn't have the zombie summon. I don't get it, but it is what it is, I guess. So his is 24 seconds. No, that's not right. It's 19 seconds. Yeah, 19 seconds longer. So it's up from 86 to 105. And then if you overcast it to summon a White King, it's 23 seconds longer. So it's up to 140 from 117. So overall, those are all very, very good. Those are fantastic. Summons just last longer, which is good. They should. Arrow of Kurnos is now 50 gold more expensive. So it's more expensive to take. The penetration has also been reduced from 10 to 6. So that shouldn't matter outside of really, really rare cases. Like if you manage to shoot like a bunch of units at once with it that are grouped up, or if you manage to like get on the flank and shoot someone down the side, it'll make it not as good at just obliterating everything in its path. It's still going to be stupid good. Like, it's still a very good ability. Blessing of Asaph, and True Blessing of Asaph, which are Khalidah's passive ability, now have a 55 meter range instead of a 35 meter range, and they also give poison. Cool. Unfortunately, it still sucks. Unfortunately, it still sucks. Khalidah's ability is trash. I'm gonna be honest. It's not good. It's just not a good ability. I really wish they would rework it to it just gives all units poison. Like it gives all units within range poison. Well, allied units, all allied within units within range poison, and it also gives ranged units that are within range like extra damage, maybe to keep like the range damage component. But I think it should just give poison to everybody, instead of just range, because like when you have a melee duelist fast character and she's like, oh, I buff ranged units, like it's so dumb. It's always been dumb. Her tabletop rule was dumb because it was like it only worked on the unit she joined, and so you had to like the only way you could really get your full effectiveness out of Khalida is you had to put her in an archer unit with like 100 fucking archers in it because it was just very dumb. It should just be she buffs everybody around her. That way, like, she still damage buffs ranged units, and so like that's still worth it if you're going that angle. But like that way, she's at least useful, being out on the melee line, because people aren't taking her to like just sit back with their ranged units. I find this very silly. Quicksilver Shot as a buff ability has now a 55 meter range. Boon of Aisha now has a 55 meter range. Glorious Death used to be a free ability to take in multiplayer. Now it costs 150 gold. Abyssal Howl, which is the Boon of Aisha, I want to say is one of Alariel's passives. Abyssal Howl is I'm pretty sure this is the ability on the Incarnate Elemental of Beasts. Now has a 55 meter range, which is great. Dead Eyes, which is the passive ability. So Quicksilver Shot, Dead Eyes, and Hail of Fire are all and Darken the Skies, Horn of Aisha, Loose. These are all of the passive range buff abilities. So all of the passive range buff abilities are going up to 55 meters. Just all of them. Toxic Rain, which I believe is the passive ability from the Lore of Stealth for the Skaven. So whenever you cast a spell, it now debuffs enemies for 10 seconds instead of 8 seconds, so it's just buff. The Blood Shield ability, which, I can't remember who has Blood Shield. I think that's something in Khorne's army, but I can't remember exactly who it is. That now has a 20% magic resistance instead of 15. Ancient's Protection and Wrath of the Wood, which are stuff going on. Those are the Wood Elf passive abilities. So Ancient's Protective is the unique Wood Elf passive for the Lore of High Magic, and Wrath of the Wood, I think, is the unique Wood Elf passive for the Lore of Dark Magic, if memory serves. They're both going up to 15-second actives when you cast spells from those lores instead of 12 and 8, respectively. Enchanting Beauty, which is I think that's a debuff from Marathi or something like that. It's a debuff from someone that's cute. Now has a 55 meter range. Breath of Hatred, which I think is Scarbrand's breath attack, now has 3 uses instead of 2. Formless Horror. God, I don't even remember what Formless Horror is, but the recharge time has been cut in half. So that's a 60-second recharge instead of a 120-second recharge. And then Curse of Undeath. So Curse of Undeath is the healing ability for Nehekara, I believe. This is a compensatory buff, compensatory buff due to this passive, losing roughly half of its healing when moving to Warhammer 3 compared to the Nehekara equivalent, leaving it roughly 2 point. Oh, okay. Oh, this is the Lore of Vampires one. So, okay, that's nice actually. So when the Lore of Vampires, when you cast a spell from the Lore of Vampires, your healing is now better for your army, which is cool. Solar Engine, they fixed it. Cool. So the Solar Engines, actually no, they debuffed it is what it really is. So the Solar Engine does not give as much fatigue back per second. It only gives 0.25% back instead of 1%. So that's a debuff for the solar engine. Empowering shrooms from the Night Goblin Big Boss now lasts for 35 seconds instead of 28. Soliak's Lullaby. Okay, this was a debuff that was long in the coming. I don't understand why this wasn't the case. This ability was hilariously goofy. So it costs 200 gold due to a bug, but they're keeping it that way. But now it no longer heals fucking everything for some stupid reason. So Soliak's Lullaby is now like most healing abilities, and it's capped at 4 units. So the stupid bullshit Kislev infinite heals has been kneecapped significantly. So they can no longer heal like their entire fucking army with their heroes. So now it's capped at 4 guys, which is very, very reasonable. It was super stupid that it was ever able to heal everybody. Dawes' Song of Winter Sunlight is now 50 gold cheaper, as is Tor's Battle Hymn. Burning Rage, ooh, gosh, I can't even remember who unleashes this vortex. But it's been buffed, so it deals 8 less base damage, but 8 more armor-piercing damage. Wrath of Khorne has a notably higher target intercept range. Slime Trail, which is actually a really, really nice debuff from your Beast of Nurgle now, and I think Great Unclean Ones, but I know for a fact it's on the Beast of Nurgle. I can't remember. I think the Great Unclean Ones might be able to get it in single player, actually. But it has a 35 meter range instead of a 50 meter range, so that's a notable buff for that debuff range. Strength of the Penitent has a 5-second longer active, which I think is a flagellant ability. Smoke and Mirrors, which is the Lore of Shadows passive. Wow, this is a really nice buff to Lore and Shadows, actually. So it now gives you 10% extra charge speed and 10% extra turn speed, which is incredible. Foe Seeker gives, oh wow, Foe Seeker now gives 25% charge speed. Evasion now gives you a 10% flat speed passive bonus. Holy shit, some of these are really nice. So Smoke and Mirrors, the Lore of Shadows passive, is way better than it was. Mighty Oathstone, which is the dwarf ability that is like a kind of like a functional leadership ability for Balagar, has 20 extra meters, so it's a 55 meter range buff now. Aura of the Lady now has a 55 meter buff. Exorcism got buffed. Wow. So Exorcism, which used to give you, oh god, it used to give immune to psychology. Then I think they changed it to a flat leadership buff. Now it not only lasts longer, so it has a 15-second last instead of an 11, it now gives magic attacks. Holy moly, that's really, really good. That is really, really good. They need to buff the Lore of Heavens. The Lore of Heavens, which is, I think it's like Thundering Skies or something like that. It's terrible. It's so bad. All it does right now is it like debuffs, I think, like speed and melee defense on flying units. It's terrible. In my opinion, they should just make it what it is in tabletop, which is, or more like its tabletop version, where it should deal damage to flyers. Like if units are flying, enemy units are flying when the spell is cast, it should deal damage. I think that's perfectly reasonable, because that's still like fairly niche, and you're not going to be able to like spam it. The Lore of Heavens is not a good spam lore. So I still think it would be reasonable, but that would actually make it useful. I should actually message CA about that. Item abilities. Shieldstone of Aisha from the Everqueen is now a 55 meter range. So that gives some really nice buffs. So that's just better. The Shadow Crown no longer needs enemies in range to activate, which is really, really strong. The Moonbow ability now has a very strong homing profile, so it's much more likely to hit. The Braid of Bordelot on Albric now has a 55 meter range instead of 35 meter range, so that's really, really good. The Guiding Eye, Enchanted Spyglass, and Loremaster's Cloak. These are all like passive buff abilities. Most of them, Enchanted Spyglass and Guiding Eye affect range units. Now have 55 meter radius instead of 35, which is awesome. Loremaster's Cloak, 55 meter radius, audio, awesome. Sunfang got a fat buff, so Sunfang now deals a third of its damage as armor piercing instead of being pure base. So Sunfang got way fucking scarier. Sunfang is going to be so much better against infantry, or armored infantry. Like that's a huge buff for Sunfang and Tyrion. Showblade, which is has a debuff aura, as does Heartrender of the Dark Sword. These are debuff auras. They've gone up by 20 meters to 55, so much bigger debuff ranges. Heartrender and Dark Sword being a Marathi, Chillblade being a generic item. The Rod of Torment, which shoots out pew pew later, now deals significantly more damage, 114 more armor piercing damage, so that's going to hurt way more. The Blasphemous Amulet item now gives you flaming attacks in addition to its other buffs. The Crown of Everlasting Conquest from the Warriors of Chaos is not as good at healing by just a little bit. So it lost 0.05% per second healing, and it also gained fire weakness. So it gives you standard regen now, essentially. So it's no longer better than regen. It just kind of gives you standard regen. The Doom Totem item now has a 20 meter larger range. The Vessel of Chaos now lasts for 8 seconds longer than it used to, which is from the... I forget what item that's from, but yeah. Chalice of Blood and Darkness no longer has an infinite range. It now has a 100 meter range for when it's triggered. I want to say that's a Chaos Dwarf item. So now it does have a max range. The Storm Lance got a really, really nice buff. Instead of having only 2 uses per battle, but it recharges outside of battle, it now has an infinite number of uses, but you have to be in combat to recharge it, which I think is perfectly reasonable. Armor of Ursin, now when it's getting to the phase where it gives you weapon strength bonus, it gives you 25% instead of only 18, so nice buff. The Brazier Mace of Ursin on Kostaltin is super fucking scary now. It gives him a 50% extra weapon strength instead of only 25, which holy shit, okay. Pigeon Plucker Pendant now has a 55 meter range instead of 35, which is actually quite good. Pigeon Plucker Pendant's not bad in certain scenarios. Dig In is 50 gold cheaper. Nice. Spell. Wow, there's so much shit in this patch. We've been going for almost an hour and a half. We're almost there. Spell. Sockbent's Incantation, the Skullstorm. Both versions are cheaper Winds of Magic. Very, very nice. So cheaper to cast. Syrian's Incantation of Vengeance is shorter. So it's 2 seconds shorter than it used to be, so it's not going to deal as much damage. So it deals less damage. Lesser Doom Bolt deals 114 more armor piercing damage. Nasty. Which actually puts it in line with the item we saw earlier. So Doom Bolt just deals more damage now. Transformation of Canaan with the Vargulf. Oh, wow, look at that. All of the summoning spells are cheaper, and the summonings last a lot longer. That is super interesting. So Transformation of Canaan, where Vargulf is 2 magic cheaper, the Great Eagle version is 2 magic cheaper, and the Manticore version is 3 magic cheaper. Wow. Okay, so that's some significant magic reduction. Flensing Ruin is now more expensive. Well, no, it's the same price, but it's costs what it should. But it also lasts for 2 seconds less base version and 4 seconds less upgraded version. So it's going to be dealing notably less damage. Veil of Shadows now only costs 2 Winds of Magic, and it also has a longer casting range, which I want to say Veil of... I can't remember if Veil of Shadows is the Lore of Yin spell that makes you invisible, or if it's the Skaven Lore of Stealth spell that creates the big bubble. It's one of the two, but either way, it's cheaper and it has a longer casting range. Chain Lightning deals 2 more armor piercing damage and can also now move full 360 instead of only 170 degrees, which means it's going to be more random, but it also deals more damage, so that's just a buff. Flesh to Stone, if you have the bounce spell version, you get more casts. Okay, we say the same thing. Banishment, also more random. Lesser Chain Lightning deals more damage and is more random. Mantle of Gorok is 1 Winds of Magic cheaper, both versions. Tome of Furion, which is a bounce spell, and the Wand of Chirodon also deals significantly more damage. They both deal... See, Tome of Furion is another 76 damage, armor piercing damage, I should say. And the Wand is another, oh my god, 228 fucking armor piercing damage? Good god. Okay, so those are going to hit way harder. Chillwind got a notable damage buff, plus 4 extra armor piercing damage on Chillwind, so that's going to hit significantly harder. Doombolt got a huge damage buff, so base Doombolt got 228 extra armor piercing damage, but upgraded Doombolt got 502 extra damage. Sorry, 592, excuse me, 592 extra damage. 1,600 damage from an upgraded Doombolt. That is gonna fucking hurt. Pestilent Birth is 2 Winds of Magic cheaper down to 14. Pestilent Breath from the Lore of Plague is also 2 Winds of Magic cheaper, both versions. Death Frenzy upgraded is 2 Winds of Magic cheaper. Omen of Spirits is 2 Winds of Magic cheaper from the Lore of Hags. Witch Broth, 2 Winds of Magic cheaper. Wow. Oh, wow. Okay, so a lot of spells getting very heavily buffed. Lash of Slaanesh now only has a 30-second recharge instead of 60 seconds. So you're going to be much more capable of spamming Lash of Slaanesh, which is very, very good for that spell. The Bound version also now has a 30-second cooldown, but it can be used twice instead of only once per battle. Crystal Sanctuary is 4 Winds of Magic cheaper base version. The upgraded version is also, 6. Oh no, 6, yeah. 6 Winds of Magic cheaper. That is a huge reduction. Heart of Winter, 2 cheaper, and the first phase now also applies a 10% movement penalty to affected targets. Both versions. So it's harder, once Heart of Winter has been cast on you, it's now harder to get out of it as it goes through its phases and deals more and more damage. But it also is cheaper to cast, so just flat buffs. Pavan of Slaanesh. This spell was identified as consistently overperforming in all multiplayer contexts and needed a much tougher hand. Hell yeah, it did. So what have they done? So it now applies as a pair of phases. For the first 10 seconds of Pavan of Slaanesh, it deals damage over time, which is doubled when you've overcast it, and it drains vigor, though not as much as it used to. And then after the first 10 seconds where it's dealing damage and draining, it then only does a rampage effect. Okay, that's interesting. So Pavane of Slaanesh is going to be much, much easier to avoid now, because Pavane of Slaanesh, the problem with it that made it such bullshit was that it was just too much at once. It was like a ridiculous amount of damage, plus it was draining your vigor, plus it made you rampage for a really long time. And because of all 3 of those combined, it was an instant kill spell. Like it was a god tier. You click and you win, because there was nothing you could do about it. If someone hit you with Pavane of Slaanesh, there was nothing you could do about it. They would just wait for one of your units to get in a slightly compromised position. You'd hit them with Pavane and then throw all your units at them and just kill them before they could do anything. And it was a super shitty spell. So now the first 10 seconds on the base version and the first 20 seconds on the overcast version deal damage and drain vigor, but that means your opponent is going to be like, oh shit, I'm being pavaned, and they have that 10 to 20 seconds to pull that unit back and like react to the spell and pull them back to safety before the rampage effect goes off, which could get the unit killed. So that's much more reasonable. Also, hopefully they've significantly reduced the damage and the vigor as well, which they said they reduced the vigor drain. Swiftwing from the Lore of Tempest now also gives you 25% charge speed in addition to the charge bonus. So that's quite nice. Wow, that's going to be really... Swiftwing was actually already a pretty decent spell. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. This is going to make it notably more effective. I don't know if it's going to be a great take, but if you can, like, if you're good with cavalry, this spell will be a nice have for your, like, winged lancers and bear cav. Also, the upgraded version is 1 Winds of Magic cheaper. Missile Mirror is 2 Winds of Magic cheaper base version, 3 Winds of Magic cheaper overcast version. That's fantastic. Storm of Shadows now reduces charge speed by 55% for both versions. Damn, okay. And it also doesn't cost anymore. That's just a fun, nice little bonus. Flock of Doom got pretty heavily debuffed. Flock of Doom takes 15 seconds longer to recharge. So instead of a 30-second recharge between casts, it's now a 45-second recharge between casts. So Flock of Doom is going to be much more difficult to just spam. Though, and also the upgraded version is 1 Winds of Magic more expensive. So yeah, Flock of Doom got nerfed. Amber Spear, 1 Wind of Magic cheaper, both versions. Devolve, both versions last 3 seconds longer, quite nice. And the upgraded version also is 1 Winds of Magic cheaper, very cool. Vile Tide, both versions have twice as long range. So instead of having a 100-meter range, it has a 200-meter range. So Viletide that's a really, really nice buff for Viletide. Shield of... Whoa, my God. All right, so Shield of Thorns got a nice buff. The base version now reflects 20 damage. So it gives you melee damage reflection. So now it's 20 instead of 14, and the upgraded version is 32 instead of 48. So it's going to deal a good bit more damage back at enemies attacking you in close combat. Dwellers Below got a huge price reduction for the base version at minus 3 Winds of Magic cheaper. That's very significant. Penumbral Pendulum upgraded now deals 5 extra armor-piercing vortex damage, so it's going to just deal more damage. The Withering from the Lore of Plague, I think, is 1 Winds of Magic cheaper, both versions. Foot of Gork! Hey, Foot of Gork got buffs! Hooray! So the Foot of Gork basically traded out 8 damage between its base and armor-piercing values. For the base version, but it switched out 12 for the upgraded version. Oh, okay, interesting. Okay, so instead of Foot of Gork being mostly base damage, it's now exactly 50-50. So half the damage from Foot of Gork is base, half the damage is armor piercing. So it's just much more effective against armored targets now. Purple Son of Xarius deals quite a bit more damage. The armor piercing vortex damage is now 11 instead of 7. That's a notable increase. It also has a 360 randomized movement instead of 170. So once again, randomized movement. Flaming Sword of Ruin is 1 Winds of Magic cheaper for both versions. Banishment, the upgraded version is 1 Winds of Magic cheaper, and they also have the fully randomized movement. Barona's Time Warp, in addition to all the movement and crazy other buffs, it now also gives you 25% extra charge speed. Very, very nice. Curse at the Bad Moon, both versions deals 2 extra base vortex damage. I still feel like Curse at the Bad Moon could use another... My opinion, which might not be popular, but I'll just say it. I think the Curse at the Bad Moon should only... the debuff should only affect enemy units. I don't think it should affect allied units. I'm fine with the damage affecting both sides because, it's a vortex spell and that's standard. But I think it should not deal the curse part to the greenskins as well. I think it would actually be a much more viable spell if it only dealt the debuffs to enemies instead of to everybody. But that's just my opinion. Night Shroud upgraded is 2 Winds of Magic cheaper. That's the Night Goblin Lore Little Wasp spell. Giena's Golden Hounds lost 3 of its base damage, but in exchange for 3 armor piercing damage. So basically, it just deals much better damage against armor targets, which is great. And then Curse of Years now lasts for 3 more seconds, so it's a 35-second debuff, and it's only 10 Winds of Magic instead of 11. Woo! Okay, that was a big fucking hotfix patch. Wow, the hotfix patches normally do not have that much stuff in them. But holy lordy, so that was a huge amount of changes for multiplayer. Very, very multiplayer focused patch, but obviously a lot of these changes will also impact single player. Some fun stuff in here. Yeah, I don't have much else to add. I will say the foot character thing is going to be huge. I am very, very curious for those of you that play the game on a regular basis. Let me know how this is going for y'all. I want to know, how are y'all feeling about the foot character Knockback? Are you finding your foot characters are more reliable? Are you finding they're dying easier? Do you like it? Do you hate it? I think this change is by far the star interest of this entire patch. Obviously there's a good number of cool things, but this one really catches my attention. Some significant buffs to spells and abilities though. But overall, sounds like a great patch. Sounds like they also took care of some of like the more oppressive issues in multiplayer. Don't know if that fixed a lot of those issues, but at least some attempts were made. And yeah, looks pretty good. I've already been talking for almost an hour and 40 minutes, so I'm going to get the hell out of here, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.